What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to talk about making the transition. We're continuing to build your golf swing. Let's get into it. What's going on, everybody? Scott Oden coming at you. We are here in the studio. We're going to continue our Building Your Golf Swing series. All right, so we are moving in today to our transition phase. So if you remember the parts of the golf swing, all the way from P1, address, all the way through to the finish, P9 or 10, however you want to classify it, we are building the swing and talking about each part. Now, if you did not watch our other videos in this series, the grip, the takeaway, all of those, please go watch those because it's all about sequence in the golf swing. As you start back, that's going to affect things later on, and you have to make up for any moves that might be off earlier in the golf swing. So go watch those. I will link those down below, then come back to this video after you watch those and study them. So we're going into the transition here, okay? So transition is we have got to the top of the swing. That's P4 up there at the top, and we need to start moving into P5. I call it P5.5 because I think it's very important to get the club started on the correct path on the way down. So we're gonna talk about that. Again, we're gonna break it down into two parts, what the body does and what the hands, arm, and clubs do, okay? So let's get into the body motion first. All right, so we're talking body motion as we start to transition. So we got this club up here at the top of the swing. You're gonna see, I have the pressure board out again. Pressure board is showing that I'm gonna be shifting my pressure, but by the time I get to the top of the swing, I shift my pressure to start. By the time I get to the top, I should already have shifted my pressure back to my lead side, okay? So a lot of people think, all right, I'm gonna shift back, get to the top. All right, now as I go, I'm going to shift and start everything on the way down. That is not the way it works. It gets a little muddy as you work through your swing because some of the stages are gonna start blending a little bit because things are starting to move faster. So when I go back, what I wanna see is people are starting their downswing. They are already moved to their lead side. In fact, what I like to see is as people go back, they're moving back, back, back. By the time the club gets to P3, which again is lead arm parallel to the ground, moving up towards P4, I want to see us already starting to turn and pressure back to the lead side. And again, that happens because I've turned my body and I'm turning and I'm almost basically falling backwards towards the target. That is what is going on. From there, as we start this club down, what I want, and it's important to have pressure on that lead side, is because I want to brace myself. As I get this club started down, I need to brace myself with my body to be able to handle what is coming, okay? So big mistake that people make with the body. They get up here and they think, all right, I gotta fire my hips. They think that's what's going to do it. It's not, okay? Now, I'm not saying from a standpoint of, hey, your hips might move and they might actually start moving first, but that is going to be a natural reaction as we start to pressure into the lead side, okay? That's a natural thing that we'll start seeing. When people fire their hips, what they typically do is they get up here and they're on their trail side, they fire them and they're hanging on their back foot, and this trail hip is starting to move in. This lead foot starts, or sorry, trail knee comes in, trail foot comes off the ground. Those are the things that get in the way of you making a successful swing. So what ends up happening, we start seeing early extension, stuff that we try to do to get out of the way so the club can get into the golf ball. So your main goal as we start down with the golf club for the body is pressure and stay out of the way. Stay out of the way. I want to keep my hips back, which means if I keep my hips back, my upper body is actually going to be working a little bit lower as I go to hit this golf ball. So that is a great thing that you should try to feel, and then you're going to be set up for what the hands and arms do throughout this swing. All right, guys, so we're gonna start talking about hand and arm motion here. So this is where it gets a little tricky because there is an idea that I wanna just briefly touch on here, and that's the idea that there's something called kinematics and there's something called kinetics, and this is in science, but we apply it to the golf world. And what is kinematics? Kinematics is essentially what we've talked about, in other areas of the swing where, hey, your body is physically going to move. If I turn, hey, I turn to 90 degrees at the top of the swing. That is a kinematic of, hey, that you see something and it actually just does it. The problem with that is it doesn't tell you how that was created. To have a kinematic movement, to move my body, I have to have a force that moves it. That is what kinetics is. So, for example, when we talked about turning away from the golf ball, we didn't talk about just turning. We talked about you need to pressure into the ground, which starts your turn, right? That's the force that you need. The problem also with kinetics is you can't see them. So these are forces that are invisible. And we've probably felt them. I know I felt them. That's why I love them. But they've been very difficult to quantify until recently. So we've seen it. I was lucky enough to work with Malaska, who talked about the invisible swing all the time. But then we've had more mainstream, physicists and all that coming in. Dr. McKenzie, Dr. Kwan, Dr. Nesbitt have all come in. They talk a lot about this. There's many more, by the way. And they are able to quantify what is actually happening. So I'm telling you what I've learned from them and what I've learned with working with students that works, okay? So I know people are going to fight on this and say that's not true, whatever. That's fine. I'm not here to change anybody's mind if you don't want it changed, but I am going to tell you what is been proven, okay? This is proven and this is actually what happens. And if you take it from the lens of, okay, this is what he's saying, I'm going to watch for this now and see it in like a pro swing. That might help you start identifying what they're actually doing, okay? So just keep that in mind as we're going through this, all right? Now, when we start talking about what do I like to see with the hands and arms as we transition. So again, we've gone back, we've pressured, we're keeping space with the body. I want to talk about the trail arm here first, okay? And this is going to be pretty much the big guy here as we go through this golf swing on the way down. This one's very important, I think. So when I go up to the top of the swing, what we see from the best ball strikers is when they're coming down, I'm doing this without a club for right now. If you were to just take your arm and you go up to the top, what we see from the best ball strikers is they start rotating this arm down, okay? So specifically their forearm. So if you take your trail forearm, and I'm just looking straight here at you, okay? And what we call it is pronation. When anytime you're turning in towards your body, that's pronation. Outward would be supination, okay? How I remember it, I'm holding bowls of soup. I'm not, okay? So pronation, we're just turning in, right? And if you do that, watch what happens to your wrist. So again, I'm only trying to turn my forearm, from my elbow to my wrist. If I just turn that, watch what happens to my hand, okay, and my wrist. You see how my wrist will start bending back? That's naturally what's going to want to happen. That's the natural movement of that wrist. So when I get to the top of the swing, I don't want to put too much stress on my wrist. If I tighten up my wrist muscles, I do any of that, I'm going to cause issues with having some wrist pains. I'm also going to tighten up and it's going to make it harder for me to move them freely. So that's not going to be good either. So when I get up here to the top of the swing, typically what we're going to see is arm's just going to start twisting down. I'm twisting my forearm down, my trail forearm down, and I'm getting this wrist into a position where it's actually going to cover the golf ball more. So you can see how it's pointing more down. That's what we want to see as we go through. So you'll notice I'm not doing anything where I'm going to pull angles, because if I do that, what actually happens is my wrist turns the other direction, or my forearm, and then my wrist actually does the opposite. So you think if I turn my forearm to the supination side, right? If I turn it the other direction, instead of turning it down like we want to, just rotate the other way, my wrist is actually doing that. That's what we don't want, right? That's flipping, that's losing angle, stuff like that, right? That's not what we want. We go back, we come up, we're working that forearm down as we go, and we're trying to get that club into position. This is a huge one. So again, we don't see, I'll see people say, oh, I've got to shallow it. I got to do this with the arm and elbow. When you do that, I want you to pay attention. Just try that movement. If I do that, I'm bent over to a golf ball. I go up. when I try to do that, I can't do it personally. Like, I can't rotate my shoulder all the way back here. And a lot of people can't do that either. But what ends up happening is my body's like, all right, you want to get back there? Look what's happening to my body. Does this look like a common golf fault that many of you might have? I'm going up, I do this, what happened? I early extended. I'm tilting back, I'm hanging back. All this stuff is going on in that golf swing. I want to get up here and I want to pressure this club down. I want to pressure this trail arm down, rotate it down, and get into a good spot. That's really all we're doing as we start from the top and start working our way down. Now, specifically with the golf club, again, this is where it's going to get a little tricky because it's going to go against what you think you see versus what you feel, but I promise you it works. Everybody that I have do this, they will be like, man, it's so much easier to swing it. I'm hitting it farther, our numbers are faster, everything's working better, and we're hitting it straighter. I mean, it's just all gravy, but it goes against what you think that you see. So when we go up here, that's why I like to use the plane. You can see here, I've got the plane. Plane is pointed straight at the camera here. Okay, so you can see the top of the plane at the camera. When I go up, the bottom of the plane is facing the sky. Okay? What I don't want to do, and this is what everybody does because they want to increase their angles or hold lag. When I start down, I don't want to excessively, I don't want to try and add angle with my hands, okay? Again, when you move your arm down, that's already going to happen. That's already going to happen. And in fact, if you do this too much, you have a problem because look at where the club head is and look at where the ball is. Look at where my hands are. I should, with my hands in this spot, I should already be trying to hit the ball. The club should be already here, because then I'm going to be rotating and working through. But I can't do any of that because the club's too high. I'm not going to hit the ball. So I stop my body, you throw your hands at it, try to make any contact you can. Instead, what we are trying to do is, as we're working that arm down, we're trying to keep the club as wide as we can, okay? We're trying to keep the club as wide as we can, and we're actually trying to belly flop this plane a little bit, okay? Now, I don't want to belly flop it like crazy. I am trying to blend all the movements. I'm trying to keep the club wide. I'm trying to move my trail arm down into the hit, but I am trying to put some pressure and some force into this golf club where I am belly flopping the plane, okay? So again, if you hold this up, if I have it at address, belly flopping the plane would be me just kind of coming right at me. Now again, we move through the swing, different parts are moving, but we need to have some force that is pushing this club out away from me. That belly flop is happening. Again, we are trying to get some setup for impact. We're trying to get the club aligned properly so then we can just rotate. That would be where you fire your hips and all that stuff, if that's what you want to call it. But that's where that stuff's going to start increasing so you can actually have a stable club through impact. The thing I always tell people is if you want to have your hands working really hard at impact, then don't use your hands early. If you want to have a nice cruising impact, nice rotation, not working the face too hard, then your hands are going to have to work earlier so they don't have to work later, right? You're not going to avoid it, right? Your hands do stuff, but we want it doing stuff when it's a little bit easier to control, so when the club's going its fastest, we can just cruise on through as we go, okay? So again, what we want to see, keep the club wide. This trail arm is working down, it's rotating down, and we are actually doing a little bit of belly flopping of this club so we can keep that club wide, okay? That is the big keys as we go. We brace with our body, kind of support that, keep some space, and then we are ready to move into impact, which is going to be the next video, okay? So make sure you're a subscriber if you want to check that out when we do that, okay? So if you have any questions, please comment down below. Again, I know this is going to go against what a lot of people think, but this is what is actually going on, okay? So make sure you take a time, go out there, mess around with it, try it out, see what happens, check it out, get your videos out, see how it looks compared to what you think it feels like. That is going to be key, and I would love to hear comments on how that works for you. So leave them down below if you have them, all right? Thanks everybody for watching, and we will be back with more of the SHG swing system. So make sure you stay tuned, and we'll see you then. Peace.
Will you lift me up or send me to my knees? Start prophesizing that you'll wreck my life and leave me high and dry, yeah. But you look at me like you know something I don't. It's almost like you